Welcome everyone on this day of Guru Purnima. The Guru Shishya Parampara, or the tradition between a teacher and disciple, is an integral part of Indian classical arts, and I feel blessed to have experienced this. So, on this day, I wanted to introduce my Bharatnatyam Guru, Srimati Lata Rajesh, to all of you. To start with a formal introduction for her, she is an accomplished Bharatnatyam dancer, teacher, and choreographer and was initiated into this art form by gurus Srimati and Sri Pawar Khopoli, under whose guidance she completed the Nritya Visharad course with distinction just at the age of 9. She graduated from the Nalanda Nrityakala Mahavidyalaya and was awarded the Sri A. Nageshwar Rao Scholarship for having stood first in the Bachelor in Fine Arts degree examination of the Mumbai University. She holds a master's degree in Bharatnatyam from the Bharati Dasan University, Tamil Nadu, with a distinction in the same. She has also trained in the various aspects of Abhinay under the legendary guru, late Padma Bhushan Srimati Kalanidhi Narayanan. She has developed solo items and dance dramas depicting mythological and social themes in various Indian languages and genres of music, and has been invited to perform by various prestigious social, cultural, religious organizations across the country. These are just few of her accomplishments. I think I can go on and on. I know her since I was 7, and I think across the span of 30 years now, my relation with her and the discussions I have with her now have evolved into something so much bigger than it's bigger than just learning the art technique. And I feel that is the true essence of this day. So here's presenting a small chat with my guru, Srimati Lata Rajesh. Hello, Miss. Thank you for being here with us.
It's
Uh,
a pleasure.
so as I was going through your introduction, and I mentioned also that you completed your Nritya Visharad course with a distinction at age of 9. So I think most of us start serious training of any art form at that age. You had already completed your course, which means that like for most of your life, you've been like almost your entire life you have dedicated to this dance training. And I know it's not easy. It's a lot of hard work, needs a lot of discipline, dedication. So what was your motivation to continue dancing for so long?
I think, like you just mentioned, it's been like my entire life I've been just dancing, and I have never known anything other than dancing. And when I began, I think it was just because my mother wanted to fulfill her desires to have learned that she decided to enroll me so young. And from there on, it's been a journey where the process has been so fascinating and beautiful that from a student to a performer to a teacher and then a choreographer, and all these roles just simultaneously slide through each other. And what keeps me motivated has been the joy, the immense satisfaction that the art by itself gives an artist or a teacher, a performer in any role. There's an immense amount of satisfaction that an artist would gain from it. Secondly, I think there's also a great sense of peace that comes over you as you keep pursuing this art. The other thing that also motivates a dancer would be, or me personally, has been the kind of joy that I'm able to give or have my audience experience. And when there's a performance or they watch a performance, I'm able to have them forget their worries or forget the drudgery of their life, and the kind of joy and the peace, the happiness that I'm able to give them for that performance time. And when they come back to me with those reviews as to the kind of joy or the kind of happiness that I've been able to give them, and the memories that they carry over with them and hold close to their hearts, I think all these things motivate you. Students are a big motivating factor because when they are learning, what I'm able to impart to them, and the give and take in a teacher-student relationship. So that's another great motivating factor that keeps helping, which helps one to continue.
So you mentioned that you've been a performer, choreographer. So how has your journey been, like, through these different like, as a performer, as a teacher, as a choreographer? How has your experience been? Like, some similarities or differences? How has this whole journey evolved for you?
I think all of us begin after you're students and you've learned and you've decided to make dance your career. I think all of us only want to become performers. And so we all want to be up on stage. And I think at that age, when you're very young, it's very, very attractive to be up there on stage and to get the adulation from the
Yeah.
audience. And so that's a stage, that's an age where you only want to be a performer and you enjoy it. You work on your body, you work on your pieces, and that's one stage. And then as you start teaching, uh, probably I would, to be very honest, I would say that I personally started teaching to be able to sustain the performing career. And but from there on, as I started teaching and had more and more students learning under me, it gives you a different kind of joy to be able to impart what you are learning. And at a very young stage, when I just began teaching, I also realized that the teaching process helped me as a dancer and a performer myself. Because when I would teach, those aspects helped me as a dancer in my technique to improve and build on my own technique. So that was a process which I enjoyed. And then when I think the roles just kept sliding through one into the other. And then I started choreographing for my students. I started performing along with them. And then I started, so that, and then as the learning process as a teacher, as a person goes through, so there's also a lot of learning and a research that goes into choreographies or productions that we do. So then you become you kind of move into a choreographer. So I do believe that every student, every teacher, you would just naturally also be able to choreograph.
Yeah. But has it, like, do you feel like sometimes when you are, when you're, as some things have changed, like when you're teaching, when you're, talking about like some piece, probably you learned it differently, but now when you start teaching, maybe it's because it's a different generation. So has there been any change in that sort?
I would say completely. It's a completely the teaching process. If you are, and the teaching process has kind of completely evolved. So the way I learned is the very, very hardcore traditional manner of teaching from the masters and from some of the traditional masters whom we learned. And our teachers were very strict disciplinarians, and they enforced a lot of discipline in the way we learned. And I think I'm very thankful to all of that. So when I look back at my at the journey, at the learning journey, and the process that it was, it has kind of helped structure the life. It has kind of molded me as a person. But also, art is something which personally I do believe has to keep evolving. Otherwise, any art or any learning would just stagnate, and the arts would decay if it is going to stay at that. And with every generation, the way they look at things also changes, the way they perceive things changes. So as teachers, we need to evolve, and I think I also have evolved along the journey. And with you yourself, you were one of my very first students. So,
Yeah.
and I was also very young back then. So the way I would have taught you then, back then, and what I teach to my 5-year-old or my 10-year-old students, the way I taught back then and today is very, very different.
True.
So,
Yeah, I mean, as I think like my appreciation, if I talk about like, my differences in the way I learned like from you when I think I might have started when I was 6 or 7, probably. So
yeah.
then and now, so it's very different. Like my appreciation for the art has changed, and like I look at it very differently now. And I think, but how do you maintain like that balance for discipline versus like discipline as a technique, right? Like now when you tell me, like or this technique has to be in this way, I understand that, it's so that it not just looks good, probably that's the right way for my body also, or it shouldn't harm my body. But at that age I might have thought of just like miss being like wanting something kind of. So how do you, and
We,
I feel like with this now, like I look at my kids, right? They don't like their teachers nitpicking or like telling them again and again. So how do you maintain that? Because I feel like classical dance does need that some sort of discipline, right? Otherwise the technique is not correct. So I don't know if you have anything. How do you maintain that balance between?
I agree with you that classical dance is all about discipline, and only through that discipline and the rigor of practice can you get the technique, the framework of your technique. The framework of your technique is what then helps you build on in terms of choreography and learning and exploration of expressions and the movements and emotions and all of that. So for all of that, the basics, the groundwork, the technique has to be very hardcore and very strong. So in my teaching, and I'm very clear on that because my training also has been so uh, very structured. Uh, so that still stays the same. I think the changes that have evolved or have come into the teaching is probably in the way we deal with the children, the way we need to, get them convinced to come on board with you to be practicing. And I think that is a process which evolves every day, so that there's no set rule to, with this generation I would be able to work like this, or with next generation, or with this student. And it's also a very, very personalized thing, because each student who is in front of me is a very different individual with a very different personality. So I, as a teacher, need to be able to understand the personality and work with them accordingly. So I think, like, for example, you have students with whom giving them a very structured framework of how they need to work helps. And with some students, what works is just being very firm with them and giving them certain deadlines, or, giving them some end goal to achieve. With some of them, what works is sympathy and empathy and getting them to work. At times it is asking them to work for you. So with very young students, what I employ is anything that is going to work with that particular personality of with that particular individual child. And we do not compromise on the technique, we do not compromise on the learning process of the technique. So the rest of it, the teaching evolves. And if the teaching also evolves, because I think as an individual, the teacher also evolves, grows, and have, so that is all. It's an ongoing process which happens. Like, for example, today we, with the pandemic all around us, and all of us had locked out. So as teachers, we've also moved on to the online classes. Like I always had a lot of students doing these online sessions, but they were all students who probably had trained for a long number of years and went abroad for further studies and wanted to probably do a piece somewhere, and we did a Skype call, and we had a, they learned one piece because they wanted to perform somewhere. We did all those things, but this was never the regular. But now this is like having online classes is the new normal for all of us classical dance teachers as well.
Yeah.
So I think we've evolved here also. So the learning process continues. Yes, and like this is like completely has been a challenge, but
Yeah.
over the last 3 months, I think we've all got comfortable. The teachers, the students, all of us have got comfortable with it, and the learning process continues. So I think this is the only way we can have the art also continuing.
Yeah, and I think it's a good thing because people don't realize, but this, like when you're learning art or just like, being engaged in this entire process is actually beneficial and for their mental health, right?
Absolutely.
So, and
Absolutely.
you also have some experience with how, like, can you comment on something like about how dance can help with emotional and mental well-being?
Uh, I think it's just the kind of joy, to put it very, very simply,
Yeah,
the kind of involvement that a classical art needs. So, the technique of classical art needs you to be involved completely, physically, mentally, and emotionally. You have to be very invested emotionally as well to be able to get your technique right, to get your hands and feet in the position that it is prescribed to be there. And then because we have the technique of your mind and all of it, you have to be so invested in it
yeah,
that that's the time where this is this is where I also call dance as yoga. What is yoga? Yoga is union. And again, any classical art forms needs you to be so very much invested in what you are doing. So it is that, and also as a dancer, when a dancer is working on their pieces with very young kids, sometimes it is coming and just dancing for that hour gives them that high and that joy. Wherein I have had so many times a student who would come in sulking, and they would be coming in sulking because they probably had an argument with the mother, or they've not got something that they want. They probably wanted to wear some other kind of a dress, and the mother insists you're going to dance class and you have to wear the uniform, the prescribed uniform. And so the child comes sulking and the child comes crying at times. Sometimes it's because they want to play out and they do not want to come and spend an hour at dance. But once they are there, you get them on board, you get them to cheer up and they just dance along. I have seen it change them so much, just that hour of dancing. They are then halfway through the class, they are smiling, they're happy, they're interacting with everyone else in class, and they go back with a big smile. So there itself, I think it's at that very, very young stage, where you're this is something which shows you very easily how the mind is being helped. And this just continues. And that's how it is, you're so involved in what you're doing, the kind of joy it gives you, the kind of release that it gives you from being totally involved in the art form. So at any age, whenever you are dancing, you have to be totally involved, and that kind of helps your mental health. And dancing is an expression of joy, so that kind of, I think, solves a lot of worries, and it kind of helps. Also what happens is there's a kind of connect that between a teacher and a student also, that is created and developed over years. And I consider myself very fortunate and very blessed because I children bond with me, largely, I think, with most dance teachers because, or music teachers, because then we are not judging them over their academics and there's no pressure to excel in terms of marks or anything of that sort. So there's also a kind of release that students experience just by being in that company or being able to dance or speak and all of that. So I think these are all small ways in which the mental health, it helps the mental health of students. And also I have seen, may not be directly in relation to the mental health, but I have seen how the art is able to mold a personality, change personalities in
Yeah.
positive ways.
Yeah.
So it kind of makes you a stronger individual, and it then helps the mental process as well.
I agree completely. I feel because I have experienced that. I always feel I'm always so happy uh, when I dance, and I think that's like why this whole like this whole idea of like it, dance and neuroscience and all because I'm like I know it's so helpful and I feel so good. So there has to be some explanation, like there has to be something behind it, right? Uh, and I like, and that's why we started this entire like
I'm
videos.
so happy you're doing it because I think as dancers, we still know all of it, but I don't think we know the science or like the way we were discussing and, about the
Yeah,
connection or the way both of them are brought together. So I'm so very happy and glad that you're, putting both of it together and putting it out to the world for them to understand that how scientifically both the things can work hand in hand, and this beautiful art form, which has just come down through tradition, through centuries as a tradition. And we are all very fortunate to have been blessed with it, and how it can help a person in all ways,
yeah. I mean,
physiologically.
to be honest, sometimes it's very surprising, because it's like I started with dance, then I went to move like biomechanics, science, and now I think when I'm like when I started my dance training again, I'm looking at it with a different aspect. But the surprising part of me, like for me, like about the whole thing is how this ancient art form, which has been there like for hundreds of years, how many similarities it has with these scientific like techniques. So and uh, that's why like I felt that the senior population, right, who are like really at risk right now, they are the ones, in fact, who like my parents. They know so much about the literature and the music and dance. Like, they might have not been trained in it, but theoretically also. So looking at that generation, I feel they have this like it's almost like a vast treasure that they have with them, the knowledge and the acquaintance, familiarity with all these art forms. The only thing is, but they don't realize how much it can benefit them, right? So, and probably like this, we could end our interview on this note, like so what do you how do you think like the seniors can benefit from dance? Like, of course, like the best thing would be they all start dancing, but it might not be physically possible for everyone. But just by viewing dance or some, how do you think it can benefit? I mean, I think there's no age to start
Yes,
learning any.
absolutely. Absolutely. There's absolutely no age to begin learning. And the learning process, if physically they are capable of doing it, there's nothing better than them beginning at this age. And also, if they do begin, I think everyone should remember that with whatever limitations, or with whatever, rather than limitations, I would want to use the word capabilities. With whatever capability they have, or what they can't do, I think that can all be still kind of accommodated into the learning process. And at whatever age they can learn, and I'm sure it helps them. You would be the better person, and I'm sure you're already doing it, explaining the scientific understanding behind the way it would help them. So the learning process is absolutely possible at any age, and any teacher would be able to kind of modify the training the classical training, though it has a technique and a framework, I'm sure can be modified to accommodate the physical capabilities that anyone would have. That said, that's the physical aspect. But when we also, what also dance, like we just spoke earlier, is dance also helps the mental and the emotional aspect. The emotional aspect is today, I think that's also with the senior population, what is we all need to take care of, and what they need to take care of is also the emotional aspect, because that's also something which then affects their physical health. So, be it practicing dance, being doing more small movements that they can, and also when you view, since you asked me that question, is engaging in viewing good performances. When they are engaged in those viewing of performances or listening to music, with the kind of involvement that they would be able to feel, the identification with that particular movement that they may feel, is also a huge release, and that would kind of help them. So, either ways, I would say that classical art, dancing, uh, any classical art is going to, any art form rather, not even classical, any art form would help the senior population, and it should be accessible to everyone. And in either as a participant or as a viewer, and I'm sure it'll help them.
Yeah, I feel like when you when you see dance performances also of some older the dancers who are the gurus and the pioneers, like you literally say, right, like, oh, like, the age has not touched this person. So
Yeah,
I feel like the dance training and the entire process really does help.
it
And
does.
I hope, like, with all, with this initiative, more and more people realize the importance and the benefits of our classical Indian, like, traditional art forms, and try and either learn or you know like start practicing it more in their everyday life. So
I think it's a great initiative that you've begun, and for Indian art, as well as for the people that you're trying to reach out to. So I'm sure it's going to reach out to people, and you would be able to reach out to more people, and this initiative will help them understand, even if they get into viewing, and the viewing helps them, and then they start exploring what they're capable of doing, and it helps them. I think the purpose of art is solved in a small way. So I think art was is there to benefit mankind, and I'm sure this would. So all my best wishes and love to the
thank you,
success
miss.
of this venture of yours.
Thank you, miss. Yeah, thank you for joining us today.
It was a pleasure. It was lovely having this chat with you.
Thank you.